After deadly floods killed more than 100 people in the Texas Hill Country, lawmakers accused the Upper Guadalupe River Authority of failing to protect people from the dangers of the river. This week, on Inside the Investigation, investigative reporter Matt Grant looks into who controls Texas's rivers and new calls to reform the century-old system. Welcome to Inside the Investigation. I'm Kelly Wiley, and joining me today is the investigator in our office who's been so focused and relentless in trying to figure out what happened during the Independence Day floods. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Matt, I want to just jump right in because there have been so many questions for people in power after this deadly flooding. Questions for Kerr County, for Camp Mystic, for the state. And in your story, you look specifically at the role that river authorities play in controlling and making these rivers safer. Tell me, how do they fit into all of this?
Well, water, obviously, hugely important in Texas, and these river authorities, they're crucial. They've been described as quasi-state agencies. Each one is created by the legislature. And like Texas's rivers, they're all unique in terms of how many people are on the board, how long they serve for. Each one is different. And they're different in terms of how they even get their money. Some raise it through property taxes, other by selling water or hydroelectric power. So they're all different. They're not the same. And they're important, hugely important, because when it comes to flood control, drought mitigation, water quality monitoring, these are the people who are in charge of all that. And what happened after the July 4th flooding is the Upper Guadalupe River Authority really came under fire. One, because they weren't monitoring the river gauges locally, the ones that taxpayers were paying for. It was the National Weather Service that was monitoring those gauges. So they came under fire for that, and also for turning down a grant opportunity to fund a flood warning system 9 months before more than 100 people were killed during the July 4th flooding. And what got me and our team interested in looking at river authorities is after that catastrophic flooding, the legislature held a special hearing in Kerrville. And the director of the UGRA was questioned about some of those decisions. And it came down to a line of questioning between a lawmaker and him. And he said, we are accountable to the voters and to the taxpayers. We are accountable to them. Well, the Upper Guadalupe River Authority is appointed by the governor, like the vast majority of river authorities in the state. And one of the lawmakers had said to him, well, if the public is not happy with the job you're doing, they can't unelect you. And the director acknowledged that and said, yes, that's correct. So that got us wanting to look more into the system. How many are appointed by the governor? How many are elected? And how do these systems work? And that's what we were focused on.
And what did you find when you started asking those questions? Because I think it's one of those things where we are all focused on who's the president. We're all focused on who's the governor. But it's these roles that you really don't hear about until something goes wrong often that, like you said, hold a lot of power. So what did you find?
Yeah, well, we looked at more than 15 river authorities. We only found 2 that were elected. The vast majority, like we said, are appointed by the governor. Bandera and San Antonio were the 2 that we found that have an elected system. And when it comes to who's serving on these boards, there really is a diverse background in the individuals who are tapped. UGRA's director, Dr. William Rector, he's a radiologist. We found small business owners, oil and gas executives, advertising folks. It really runs the gamut in terms of a diverse background and experience. And in some cases, some of the people who are selected to serve on these boards have donated very generously to Governor Abbott. Since 2010, we found one board member with the Nueces River Authority gave more than $700,000 to Abbott, and another with the Lower Colorado River Authority more than $430,000. Now, they tell us that their work on the board is totally separate, that it had nothing to do, their appointments had nothing to do with the money that they gave Governor Abbott. And some critics say, that may be the case, but there's an appearance of politics and of favoritism when it comes to some of these positions. And that's one of the things that critics have pointed to.
Here's what I'm curious about. Between the appointments and then the few that you say are elected, is there a benefit? I mean, besides the obvious perhaps, that they are accountable to their voters, how is it working in these areas where the folks that are sitting in these positions are elected?
Well, the people who support the current system and want it to stay say that it gives a sense of continuity, that the governor, and this is what his office told us, is that he picks people based on who he feels will do the best job. His exact quote was, "As with any appointment decision, Governor Abbott chooses leaders he believes are best equipped to fulfill the duties of their office." And by having an appointed system, by and large, supporters of it say it's working. The system is working well, and there shouldn't be a need to change it. In fact, one senator, State Senator Sarah Eckhart, says the current system should stay because mixing politics into the guidance of nonpartisan public enterprises, quote, risks doing more harm than good. So people are saying that the current system is working, but there are some on the flip side who want to see more of an elected ballot box style approach, because they feel that that brings more transparency and more accountability when it comes to the way that these rivers are managed.
So basically on one end, you're having people say it could introduce an issue if it's politicized and people are just picking their favorite person to sit on this board. But on the other, and I watched your story, there were folks that feel like it's political, that the governor is appointing people to sit on them. In Bandera, how is it working for them where it is an elected board?
Yeah, so Bandera's had an elected board since 1989. We talked to their director, David Mock, and he says it's worked really well because there is public buy-in. So the board there is funded through property taxes, and voters have a say in how policy is shaped because they're controlling through their votes and their voice who gets to serve on these boards. So unlike the UGRA, if they don't like the job that they're doing, they can not elect them. They can vote for a different candidate. They can run themselves. And Mock was telling me that when you have a system like this, it creates that trust, it creates accountability. The public knows who's on the board because they help vote for them. And so he says, while it may not work across the board all over the state, it's worked really well in Bandera.
You reached out to lawmakers. What do they think about all this? Are the deadly floods, I mean, we're seeing it prompt change, but is it going to prompt change in this area as far as there being more boards that are elected?
It very well could. I mean, one of the things, so we reached out to a number of lawmakers, and one of the things that was a little bit of a consensus that a number of lawmakers said, yes, this should change, is increasing training for board members. That's something that could come down the line. We're going to watch for that. We did ask a number of lawmakers, what do you think about an elected style system? We got some differing opinions on that. Like I said, Eckhart was saying she wants to keep it the same. But one lawmaker, Representative Sarah Gomez, she now wants to see a review of all the river authorities, especially, she says, those with taxing authority, to, quote, determine whether transitioning to an elected board could improve accountability and transparency. And right now, she's one of the lawmakers who's in charge with investigating what went wrong on July 4th. And so she's definitely in a position where her recommendation would carry a lot of weight.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. I know you're going to continue to push, as you have been for several months now, to better understand this and to see what all changes are coming from what happened. So I appreciate you being here. For those of you watching, you can watch this on our KXAN Plus app at 1 p.m. every Friday. You can also catch our KXAN Investigates podcast anywhere you get podcasts. You can listen to that and get the rundown while you're on the way to work, while you're on the way on a trip. And so we hope that you'll give us your feedback and let us know the questions that you have. Thank you so much for watching.